Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Sermon Scraps for this week. We're going to be looking at Acts 2 and Hebrews 10, following up from the sermon we did this past week. So this was the first one in the series, so I spent a little bit more time on the introduction, just walking through why we're going to be studying this, the importance of us gathering together, what it means, what we're going to be looking at over the coming weeks. So as I said, we're going to be spending the next few weeks kind of dissecting Acts 2:42, which is a description of the early church, where it says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and the prayers. So those four things are going to be characteristic of what we're going to be studying. So each week we'll be taking a look at one of those aspects. This week was because we are commanded to. We are commanded to regularly meet together. So I got a couple questions Sunday that I thought I'd answer here if other people had those same questions. The first was, what was with that intro that I read from the church in introduction? Because at the beginning it was like, oh yeah, I agree with all that stuff. It's all of those are various ideas of the church. But then we got to one that maybe it's the monotheistic Muslims and Jews, potentially Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and others who follow the instruction of their religion. He is just using and describing some various views from other books. So one of them is from a book called Flame of Love, A Theology of the Holy Spirit by Clark Pinnock. One of them was a Roman Catholic view that it includes these few people in them. If you want more clarity on that, let me know. The book was called The Church, an introduction by Greg Allison. So just so you know, he is not, and I was not saying that every single one of those descriptions is a true church. These were just some ways people have defined the church in the past. Second pushback I got, or question, not pushback, was you just called yourself a worship pastor. Why'd you do that if we don't have a worship team? That's a great question, and one of the questions I asked repeatedly when I was a worship pastor. So the way I took it, the way I defined it, and I actually did this in a sermon. I went to look back and find it. I couldn't remember which sermon it was, and I didn't want to go to listen to all of them because I get tired of hearing myself. But the way I talked about it at the previous church I was at was, when you're calling me the worship pastor, it means I'm the pastor of everything, because everything we do is worship. Then I get to oversee, manage, do whatever I want to do within the scheme of the church as a whole. I've actually have some fairly strong opinions about what we call various people. There's one of the most influential books I have on this issue. It's right here. Is called Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin. This actually came out in 2008 when I was a sophomore in college, and really solidified or confirmed my call to ministry. And so he even in here says, when we're talking about worship pastors, what are we talking about? It may be better just call him the music guy. I'd be totally fine back then if you just called me the music guy. So this book is super helpful. I still have my underlines in here from when I first read it when I was in college. So kind of fun to look back. I've loaned that out. I've studied it with more people than pretty much any book I can think of. So that's what I refer to when I talk about a worship pastor. So Acts 2:42, they devoted themselves to the four things. One of the things I didn't mention Sunday, I actually like the way the Message translates these four things. The way the Message says it is teaching of the apostles, life together, common meal, and prayers. Now, I mentioned briefly Sunday that the breaking of bread I view as referring to tabling, so just a common meal together, as well as the sacrament of communion. We'll talk more about that in a couple weeks. But one of the things that is emphasizing there is a commonality, a regularity, a coming together of everything that we are doing as the church. And the way I like to think about it, I shared some of these descriptions on Sunday, but let's just look at a few of the descriptions of the church in the New Testament. First is a family. If this is a family, if we are a family gathering on Sunday mornings, then we need everyone to be there. Otherwise, it's not a true family gathering if people are just coming when they want to. Another one is branches. We studied this when Jesus said, I am the true vine. You are the branches. If we are true branches, we need to be connected to each other in order to be given life, in order to be given sustenance, in order to have the nutrients we need to thrive. Another description is the church is a building. If we are a building, if you've ever played Jenga, eventually when you are pulling the pieces out, the tower just collapses and falls over. So we need each other in order for the building to actually be built up and remain strong. Last one, a body. We are described as a body in 1 Corinthians 12, and a body needs every single part connected in order for it to function correctly. It's not going to be helpful if you've got your arm over in Timbuktu and the rest of your body here. The arm is going to be useless unless it's connected. Each part is crucial to the life of the church. So the way one of the ways I encourage people to think about Sunday mornings is like a family meal or like a family gathering. So we've got primarily, essentially three different groups of people. So think you've got on the one corner, you've got the kids who are loving spending time together. They are chasing each other around. They're throwing things at each other. They're laughing. They're playing. They are stinky in many instances. At least my kids are when they have had a full diaper. So that's one corner. You've got the kids that are just enjoying hanging out and spending time together. In another corner, you've got some of the parents who are just relieved to be having adult conversation with like-minded people after either an exhausting week at work or an exhausting week taking care of the kids. On top of that, you've got grandparents in a different corner. They're excited to see other grandparents again where they can swap war stories. They can see all the kids and the grandkids running around and making a mess. And so essentially what you should think of when you come together on Sunday mornings, if you add all those various pieces, is a noisy, chaotic mess that's a joy to be a part of. You start having inside jokes. You start being able to tell who's having a good time, who is connected to who, what we do together when we gather together regularly as a family. And so that is one aspect I want you to be thinking of when we think about the church gathering together, is a family gathering. Yet Jesus has said, I've sent you into the world, but you are not of the world. So we're called to a community. We are called to reach. God has placed us as a church here in the South Metro of the Twin Cities to bless this community, but we're not a part of this community. So that's where another way we need to think about the church is as ambassadors. So we when we gather together, we're supposed to view the church as coming together on different sovereign soil. So the moment we gather together, we are part of the nation of Christ. We're no longer Americans. We're no longer citizens of whatever place that we are citizens on earth from. Instead, we are to gather together because we are citizens first and foremost of heaven. That means when we walk into the church building, Jesus is the president and the Supreme Court. And on top of that, he's the perfect king. So when we gather as foreigners, as exiles coming into our home turf to be reminded who we are and whose we are. Then when we gather, we stir one another up. This is getting to Hebrews 10 to two things: love and good works. Love. What is love? Well, 1 Corinthians 13 has a really good summary of that. I thought I would read it for us. It says, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now, we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. So Paul is making some comparisons to some gifts that people like pursuing. So prophecies, knowledge, all these other pieces. And the only thing that is going to last into eternity is love. That's part of the reason that when we gather together as the church, it's a little taste, a little glimmer, a little glimpse of what heaven is going to be like. Because these characteristics of love are supposed to be markers of us as we gather together as God's people. The second piece we're supposed to stir each other up to is good works. Good works are those things that we do that bring glory to God. That is using our gifts to encourage one another. That's part of the reason that on a weekly basis, or many instances, you'll see me playing music on music with the music team on stage. God has gifted me with music. I enjoy using it. It's an opportunity for me to come alongside and bless us as a body, to encourage us to continue fostering our worship of God through music. It's a joy for me to be able to use those gifts. And if all of us are using our gifts for the encouragement of each other and for the glory of God, this is going to be a really, really fun body for us to be a part of. It's also important, verses 24 and 25 are kind of the main points that I was trying to get us to. It's of Hebrews 10. It says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, what's crazy to me is apparently people have been wanting to skip church since even the first century. So don't forget to meet together. Online is not enough. We need to actually meet together. And so I want us to think about the way that not neglecting to meet together and encouraging are connected to each other. So verse 25 says, not neglecting to meet together, but encouraging. So the way that we encourage is by meeting together. That's crazy to me, because so often I just think about encouraging, like I'll send you a text, like I'm thinking about you. I'll try to find ways to encourage you, to come alongside you, to help you. And one of the best ways that we do that is by meeting together. Then it ends with, we continue to do this encouraging, and we do it even more so as we see the day drawing near. Now, there are 2 days in the Bible. There's today and the day. So the way we think about that is we are to be faithful today to encourage each other until that day, the day when Jesus finally will return, where we will be in the perfect world where God will fix everything that is broken. He will right what is wrong. And until that happens, we as the church need to be regularly committed to gathering together to continue encouraging each other and setting an example to the watching world of what it looks like to actually love, honor, and care for each other. I want to end with that quote I read from Carl Trueman at the end of my sermon yesterday, where he said, that's where community comes in. Churches need to build community around clear Christian teaching, serious Christian worship, and practical Christian love. Done well, these things can grip the imagination because they offer a vision of something better than the thin communities and shallow satisfactions of consumerism. Telling people that the way they live is wrong has no plausibility unless it is set against the backdrop of a vision of something better. Church, we have that vision of something better. We need to continue meeting together, to continue encouraging each other, to continue loving each other so that we can set an example to the world of what this true, lasting, biblical community looks like. So that's the wrap up of why we're commanded to. Next week, we're going to be looking at the apostles' teaching, the first one of the 4 characteristics in Acts 2:42. And we're going to be focusing, if you want to read ahead, focusing on 1 Corinthians 15, verses 1 through 11. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. If you have any questions about anything else that I talked about on Sunday, feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, we'll see you Sunday.